I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up,
T-minus 1 minute.
live out the true meaning of its creed.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
T-minus 50 seconds.
I am paying for this microphone, Mr. Every dollar released from taxation
T-minus 40 seconds.
that is spent or invested will help create a new job.
Chivalry is dead, and women killed it.
T-minus 30 seconds.
They want to get at the table and start acting stupid. All you got to do is come back with, he's your president, he's your president.
T-minus 20 seconds.
I thought I was liberal until I moved out here. And then there's just like this psycho extra level
10,
because they feel like the
9,
way they think everything
8,
should be
7,
is so right because
6,
they live near an ocean.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Politics. I am your host, Cardon Ellis, with
Mark Murphy, attempting to restore civility to the political conversation.
All right, now we got a really interesting show lined up today. I think it's very appropriate while the Oscars are going on and everybody's, embroiled in all of these Oscars controversies with, not enough actors, not enough awards, and if you happened to think that Black Panther was anything other than Citizen Kane 2, you're a bad person. You know what I'm saying? We've got a really interesting character on the show with us today. His name is Christopher Wright, and I'm going to give him a little bit of an intro here. Christopher, I was turned on to Christopher. Actually, turned on to Christopher could be interpreted many different ways. So I think we're gonna.
Okay, this is Hollywood, California.
Yeah, we're gonna amend that.
Be careful.
Christopher first impressed me, and I saw him for the very first time in the Vice News video. And we're going to show you a clip of this here in a second. Vice News, the same news organization that called us during the whole Katie Hill and Steve Knight congressional thing and just said they happened to be interested in what we were talking about. The Vice News, obviously a very liberal outlet, had a very interesting video that I appreciated that they made where they invited a bunch of, quote, liberal and, quote, conservative members of the black community to come into their studios and to talk local politics. And we're going to play the very first 30 seconds of this just to show you who Christopher Wright is and why he's so awesome and why I invited him on the show. Can you hit that?
I grew up poor and black in Akron, Ohio. I went to one of the worst schools in Akron, Ohio. I went to the military, risked my life multiple times. There is no reason that every single black kid on the block can do that same thing.
Oh, no, we are absolutely
By show of hands, who here voted for Donald Trump?
All day.
Believing in Trump's rhetoric, just morally, I don't understand, especially
with two others. And he goes, all day. You should have seen the look on everybody's faces. And you're going to, we'll just play another 10 seconds of this so you get to know Christopher a little bit before we bring him on.
Just morally, I don't understand, especially a black person.
3 words or less, what is your reaction when you see a black person wearing a MAGA hat?
Well, there's a story.
Independent-minded brother.
Bold.
Confused. Cringe.
You do you.
Looks good on you. It can't fit on my head.
Okay, so pause it there, Cody. Pause it there. Okay, so independent-minded brother was Christopher Wright. Not only was he one of the only people that actually answered the question following the rules, having the three, the 3 words there, but it was his explanation of how he goes on and what life is like as an African-American being conservative was awesome. So I instantaneously said, hey, I want to have this guy on the show. So we are blessed right now to have Christopher Wright on the line with us. Christopher, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, my man. So, all right. So, Christopher, Really quick, man, tell us about yourself, who you are, what's going on, because I understand you run some groups in New York, or how are you chosen for this gig on Vice?
Well, first and foremost, how it all started. I grew up in a Democrat kind of situation, and as time went by, just to make a long story short, I found myself in a New York situation where obviously I'm very blue state, and I'm a Trump supporter. So, that's not always the best way to be in a place like New York.
You don't go walking around with your MAGA hat on?
No, sometimes I do. In situations, hey, look, I was recently in Albany, for what was up there with David Harris Jr. and what was going on in that situation. And I was repping for them and had a MAGA hat on, man. And you got to rep it because it's not a racist symbol. It's just saying, make America great again. And I know exactly what that comes from because my dad's former military, retired major in the Army. And, I was Germany for 5 years as a young child. I was stationed in Baumholder in Mannheim. So I always had love for the country. I never looked at America as some evil, racist place. I'm like, this is a pretty amazing place, And I just kind of came from that angle. So when Trump came as a candidate and he supported a lot of conservative values, I stepped up to the plate.
Okay, so wait a second. I was stationed in that area, and my guys were in Baumholder and Mannheim, as well as I was in Bad Kreuznach in the Mainz area. Anybody that lived in that area for 5 years, my hat's off to you. It rains, it snows, and you were serving. Your dad was serving this country, and you were there as a dependent, and that's not an easy life.
You know what? So it's funny you said that when it rains and snows. I got stuck in the snow as a child one time, and my dad had to come pull me out because I couldn't move. And, they had those snow days out there, man. And, I had a lot of great memories because my dad would take me to, like, the underground caverns out there, the castles, and, a lot of stuff that I was like, wow, a lot of history of Germany. And I was like, man, this is an amazing place.
So good thing we won the war is what you're saying.
Yeah, there's no question about it.
All right, so
of course.
You've obviously met Mark Murphy. And Mark, let me tell you a little bit about Mark. He, very good man, but he says he worked for Nixon. He was, a Republican most of his life, but then he claims that he didn't leave the party, that the party left him. And so now he's a Democrat. And I find it interesting that we have the guy that left the Republican Party saying the Democrats are better now talking to the guy that left the Democrat Party saying the Republicans are better. Mm-hmm. What's going on with this, man?
We're going to meet in the middle.
We're going to meet in the middle.
Yeah, we got to find a little balance.
Well, and I lived in New York City for 2 years, and I understand. That's a fantastic city. We know we don't always think that you speak the same language as us out here. Us Los Angeles did invent English, but we always like to claim a lot of things. But a lot of respect for what goes on there and what you guys did and coming back from some pretty tremendous attacks back in the year 2001.
Yeah, so anyway, let's talk a little bit about you and what you're doing, man, because this is something I've never understood, is the African American community is voting still to this day. What is it, 98%, 97%?
96%.
Or 96%. Okay, I mean, overwhelmingly, shall we say.
Oh, it's about 98% of black women and 80% of black men or something, 90%. It's pretty high up there. It's very high.
So why are they still voting Democrat? Because the strange thing is I just spent an entire 1.5 hour tow ride. My father's company has a fleet of vehicles, and sometimes when they break down, he'll call me to go pick one up or wait for the tow guy or whatever. And so I'm waiting for it, and this really great guy from Palmdale shows up, and we're talking, and he is adamantly not going to vote for Trump, not going to vote for a Republican, but then talks about all these conservative values, how he goes to church, how he's raising his grandchildren, how you need to be, present in the home as a father, how, all of these programs have destroyed the black community. I mean, he basically goes on a diatribe about nearly libertarian, generally conservative Republican values, but then turns around and says, heck no. I would never vote for them. I think out of this idea that there's still the specter of racism out there.
Whoa, wait a second. First off, you've just said that the church is only for the conservatives. That's not a conservative value. Church is a value related to faith, and both the liberals and the conservatives can embrace it equally.
Okay, yeah. However, you have to admit, just like Bill Maher said, chances are if you're a racist, you're probably a Republican. Chances are if you're a religious hating person and or an atheist, you're a Democrat.
Okay,
So-
I'll agree with that. You know,
You know
each
what
of
I'm
us
saying?
embraces an extreme side of the party. You've got your neo-racist and your communist, and we have,
But
you know.
see,
hey,
the only difference
I have
though
some
is
fun with him on that.
is the only difference is that's like empirically not true. I mean, there's been plenty of Purdue research that shows like basically
No, I
there's
mean,
no
you
more
look-
neo-Nazis.
We're not dealing.
No,
wait,
if
whoa,
you
whoa,
look-
whoa, whoa.
if you
I
look
put
at
some
any-
neo-Nazis away, and I've talked to neo-Nazis, and I dealt with them. When you put them in jail, you have a different purview on that.
Yeah, but also that was in the 80s, and I got to tell you, we had a supposedly
They're
a
like
KKK
cockroaches.
event.
They come out all the
yeah,
time.
you're talking about a time frame. I mean, I was like, not even like 2-3 years old at that time. Like, you know, that's you know, not ancient, but when it comes to current politics, that's a long time ago. And you know, right now, I mean, you talk neo-Nazis in America, like, and I'm in New York. Like, where are these neo-Nazis?
Yeah,
Like,
we
you
had an
know,
event in Orange County where literally there was supposedly going to be this big KKK event, and they promised that there would be, you know, hundreds of people showing up. There was 7 members of the Klan that were able to show up, and I think 2 of them, like, I don't even think they were mentally okay. I just think they were just crazy people looking for attention.
But this is
and there was
California.
like 40 cops and like 250 protesters. I mean, the percentage.
And I'm sure the media was all there. The media was there somewhere recording it.
Yeah, taking
and
pictures.
you know.
Well,
And
let's
look, I remember those whole get-togethers like that back in like the mid '90s, early '90s, on like talk show hosts, and they were like, "Oh, this big Klan meeting," and it would be like 6 people, and those 6 people would come on the talk show, and everybody would be making fun of them and laugh at them, white, black people, Hispanic, everybody be dissing them, and that would be it. And it's like that was a joke back then. Now they're using that to be like a big deal.
Okay,
And it's
so
like, why is this a big deal now?
So what is okay? I want to know what is life like for you, and also like what are you doing? Because if I'm not mistaken, you head up like a conservative group in New York City, right? I'm curious, what keeps the African American community voting so heavily Democrat, and how do we get more people like you that say independent-minded brother when they're asked about, you know, a black guy wearing a MAGA hat by Vice News? You know, how do we get more people like you, more independent-minded brothers, you know what I'm saying, out there? Because to me, it's a travesty the African-American community votes 98% anything, to be honest with you.
And I would agree with you completely.
Well, but let me tell you what it is. It's like my dad's, like you said earlier, my dad's the most conservative person I know. He's the most Democrat. You know what I mean? And like I said, this guy's a former military retired Army major. He could have been a 2- or 3-star general if he would stay in the military. He's been like it's moving around so much, you know. So it's like it's there, man. But the situation is, it's generations of the Democratic Party manipulating the black community. Because I tell people all the time, when people hear me talk, like nowadays, they're like, "Oh my gosh, oh you sound so elegant and like you speak so well." And it's like it's but if you watch black communities coming up to New York and Harlem area back in the 40s and the 50s, and when they did interviews with them, they sounded just like me. So it's not like I'm speaking some special way. It's just a way of somebody who's educated, who's, you know, knows how to, carry themselves, speak well, they dress well, they, everything was the way it is.
Okay, yeah,
but what the difference is the Democratic Party got involved with the black community back then, years ago. And after 60, 70 years of that, it's manipulated the community. So generations have manipulated. So when you come to nowadays, it's 96% at this point. The Democratic Party has control of the situation, in my opinion.
Okay, so what would have to happen to get these people to wake up? Because, for example, do you remember, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the ESPN anchor. I'm going to look it up during the break. But a very prominent ESPN anchor, the guy that always wears really nice suits. And I remember he was at Brown University. And
larger guy.
Yeah, I can't remember. Oh shoot, I can't remember his name.
I met him. I know who you're talking about. I met him at YBLS. I took a picture with him.
Okay, I just remember that he went out and he said, "Look, all I ask is that anybody that's going to quote me right now quotes my quote in its entirety. But I want the entire black community to go out today and vote Republican." Because how can we say that we're a disenfranchised people when we let the Democrats have 98% of our votes? What message does that send? It tells the Democrats you don't have to work for our vote anymore. You got us in the bag. we're with you, so they don't work for us. And then it tells the Republicans, you don't have to work for us either, because no matter what you do, you can't get our votes. Whereas if you went out and we all voted 98% right now for the Republican Party, even if you never did it ever again in your life, it would tell everybody, oh, hey, you can work for our votes. And then all of a sudden, we would be the commodity that everybody is working for, instead of this voting bloc that's perceived as in the bag for the Democrats. So I've met African Americans. I don't think they're dumb. I don't think they're stupid. I think they're incredibly intelligent. They're hardworking. They're entrepreneurial. So I think any hardworking entrepreneurial person will have to be able to look at their situation and say, okay, Democrats are no longer for me. I mean, when you're hearing AOC destroying 25,000 jobs in New York City, thinking
more than 25,000. Okay, I think about all the people that would have worked with Amazon, all the outside businesses that would have worked with Amazon for them to transport their goods to different customers' homes. To make work the telephones, to make phone calls, all these jobs that would have formed off of Amazon that no longer existed. So it would have been more than 25,000 jobs. It would have been more jobs.
But those jobs now spread about the rest of the country, and so they're benefiting a lot of other people. It's just not about New York.
Okay, yeah. So what is key? Like I wanted to get you on the show to pick your brain, because in my mind, any smart person, I mean, I can see why a hardworking guy that doesn't really pay attention to a lot of politics, who's told a bunch of times that, Republicans are racist, and, he probably goes through 3 or 4 election cycles believing it. But after a certain amount of time and a certain amount of working and having jobs destroyed and having your plant move out of town, and then, watching AOC chase away, 40,000 jobs from New York City, you'd start, you can't avoid it anymore. At this point, it's like, what keeps them? I get there's a heritage, but
it's identity politics. Identity politics is what keeps them down. It's this: oh, she's a female. Oh, she's Hispanic, and oh, she's from the Bronx. Even though she's not from the Bronx, but she stated she was from the Bronx. She played the politics there to say angle to say, oh, I'm from the Bronx. I'm from New York. She's from New York, but she's not from the Bronx. But there's a lot high Hispanic community in the Bronx, and they use the Hispanic community just like they use the Black community to get that vote, and they use it with identity politics. So it's minorities in general. It's not just the Black community. The Black community, of course, obviously, but statistics is the highest percentage. But any minority they will do the same thing with, and they're going to do the same thing with illegals. Eventually, if they can let them get over here in this country as well, in a large amount, they will do the same thing with them. It's their way of doing politics.
Is there even a remote chance, though, that the Democratic Party may be offering more for the Black community than the Republican Party? And I'm going to point to a couple headliners. We talk about the big turnaround that occurred from the Great Recession forward, and an extreme change in unemployment to the positive cycle. Also, the fact that suddenly 20 million Americans now had medical care, and the pre-existing conditions and youth got a chance to be added. And we also had this whole idea of the Consumer Protection, Financial Protection Bureau that was set up. All of those things particularly focused on, and particularly that last one, in helping the communities, but the poorer communities, and in many cases the Black communities in the inner cities, benefited from the Democratic leadership.
I think in a lot of ways what the Democratic leadership did was get the Black communities onto a government assistance kind of mind state. And they don't realize what it really damaged the Black community more than it helped, because the Black community after slavery didn't step up after slavery and say, oh, we need government assistance. They stepped up, and they came from a work ethic mind state, and they were ready to work hard to start businesses and do what they had to do. So I think the Democratic, when they came with that kind of time frame with their way of governing, I think it didn't really help out the Black community, because again, it was all about government assistance.
All right.
And
hey, Christopher, I hate to interrupt you right there. We're going to take a brief commercial break right now. We're going to come back with Christopher Wright, who's heading up the conservative action groups in New York City. He's an African-American, and he's a big-time Trump supporter, so he's got a wild life ahead of him. It is 7:26. Don't touch that dial. This is Problem Solver Politics. Be back in a minute.
You choose your dry cleaner for convenience. Maybe it's time to choose a dry cleaner that is not only convenient but does quality work at a reasonable price. Town Cleaners. They're in the center of our valley and they offer free pickup and delivery anywhere in Santa Clarita. Town Cleaners, a dry cleaner who goes the extra step. Their stringent quality control ensures the highest quality cleaning and pressing for your garments. And now through February, save 50% on all dry cleaning orders. Town Cleaners on Soledad and Rainbow Glen.
How did you become addicted? A friend? Were you at a party and someone said, "Hey, try this"? Then you got the cold sweats and started shaking. And the more you did it, the more it didn't work. So you switched to the needle. Now you're a train wreck. Drinking, drugging, broke. Your family hates you. And you hate you. Get out of your hell on earth now. Call the Detox and Treatment Helpline today for immediate help. In many cases, your insurance may cover the costs. We can't guarantee it, but we can guarantee we have what you need to change your life for the better. Pick up your cell phone and call right now. 800-694-1135. 800-694-1135. 800-694-1135. That number again, 800-694-1135.
Are you at least 55 and have a torn irreparable rotator cuff? If so, you may qualify for a no-cost clinical study of an investigational shoulder implant. Visit rotatorcuffstudy.com. Learn more about the study being conducted at Southern California Orthopedic Institute's Valencia Clinic at rotatorcuffstudy.com. See video of the device and get more information on how to enroll at rotatorcuffstudy.com.
That's rotatorcuffstudy.com, rotatorcuffstudy.com.
Sponsored by Micro Air Surgical Instruments.
At Jersey Mike's, we make a sub above. Bread baked fresh, veggies served crisp, meat and cheese sliced on the spot. Then comes the juice. Red wine vinegar and olive oil blended to perfection. It's what makes a Jersey Mike's sub a sub to behold. And beholding? Well, we think that works best with two hands. Jersey Mike's. Be a sub above.
Your Santa Clarita Jersey Mike's, a proud sponsor of Santa Clarita Sports.
Hometown, your hometown station.
This is a Problem Solver Politics production and does not necessarily represent the views of KHTS Radio or its ownership.
All right. Welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I am your host, Cardon Ellis, with
Mark Murphy, continuing to restore stability to the political conversation.
And we are joined on the line with Christopher Wright. He's a member of the Black community in Brooklyn, New York, and he also heads up the CRA, a conservative group in New York City, and he's a big Trump supporter. Christopher, I just got a question for you, man. Start out this second segment. What makes you such a big Trump supporter? Why?
Just to be brief, reason why I even went to look at the Republican side, I was looking at him in 2012 for the first time, but in 2016, what really caught my attention was Dr. Ben Carson ran first, and he was, I supported Dr. Ben Carson for a very long time. I thought he was a great man as a child. I read it. My dad gave me his book, Gifted Hands, and I always had a lot of respect for him, so I supported him, and I saw how the media kind of twisted things around with West Point and the whole situation there. And it kind of upset me because I'm like, man, this guy had a good chance, but the media kind of did certain things. And then Trump kind of stepped in there and started dismantling the media in a way. And when I saw him, I was like, man, okay, Trump, he can really handle the media like I've never seen anybody handle him. What is he about? And so I started looking at his policies, and I started watching his rallies on YouTube. And when I was watching him, going across, different states, all the swing states at that time, campaigning, I liked his policies. I liked what he had to say. And I agreed with a lot of things. So I'm like, okay, this is kind of what I stand for. So I don't have a problem with that. And then I kind of went back in the earlier videos when in the 80s and the mid-90s and what Trump was saying back then. And what Trump was saying back then was connecting with what he was saying now. And the only difference was back then, they had an interview with Oprah he did back in the 80s. And he was saying a lot of similar things that he's saying now. And Oprah even asked him back then, are you going to think about running for president? He's like, no, I never want to run. But if things ever got too bad, I would consider it. And when he said it back then, I'm like, wow, he's running now. So I guess he's thinking we're at a point now where things are getting kind of bad. So now he's running. So he ran with the same policies. So I was like, I'm going to support this guy, man. So I don't see nothing, so I had nothing negative. And not to mention, I thought he was cool when I was just growing up, seeing him in like Home Alone 2 and wrestling and WWE stuff. So I was like,
He's a celebrity
I
media
never had
star.
beef for Trump, man. I'm like, what?
Okay.
Why could I hate this dude, man? Trump's cool, man. I'm like, no beef for Trump.
Okay, so in the Vice video that got me, like I said before, that got me turned on to you, you mentioned that you voted for Barack Obama both times. Would you say that you're more pro-Trump because he's Trump, or because you've changed a value system and you recognize that conservatism or that republicanism, whatever you want to call it, is better for your situation?
I think what it is, I grew up, just in a Democrat household. But when I registered to vote when I was 18, my mom told me, register. She made sure I registered the day I turned 18. And she was like, I asked her who she's voting for. She never told me. She's like, I'm just, not, you decide when you get older. But I can tell by living in my household long enough that they were Democrats. And I just felt when it came to when I got older, I just found myself finding, like, I remember when I worked at Comcast when I was in Georgia. When I was younger, I was a cable guy, and I went to a gentleman's house, and he was like the stereotypical old redneck, evil, white racist, whatever. It's my second year at Comcast. And when I went to his house, he had the Confederate flags, the strangly hair, and the white beater, Budweiser cans, Confederate flag, the whole nine.
Okay,
and I was like, okay, what the heck's going on? So I went to kind of
we used
leave.
to call those our neighbors.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, exactly. So let me fix this guy's cable, get that guy out of here. But when I started looking at his signal to his cable box, because he just had a cable TV that was messed up, I saw he had weak signal. So I started working on his service. I saw he had needed a new line to his house called a drop, and I ran out there to get my ladder on the pole and run him a new drop. And I was working hard, and it was like George's son. And he came out, he said, man, you're really working hard for this. I'm like, well, you have bad signal. It's not just your TV. And he was like, I'll give you some food. I'll give you some drinks. And, he ended up helping me out, and we got in a good conversation. And after the conversation went for a bit of time, I was about to leave his house. And he said, yo, man, can I ask you a few questions? I was like, yeah, sure. He was like, who did you vote for the last election? This is about 2 weeks after Obama won,
Okay, yeah.
For the first time. And he was like, we kind of looked at each other in like a funny way. And we were like, okay, all right. I know. He's like, I understand. First black president, great. I hope he does well. And I was like, really? Like, kind of look at him. And he's like, because if he does well, the country does well. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. And he said, now, let me ask you a few more questions so you can go about your way. And I was like, yeah, sure. And he was like, do you believe in small government? I was like, yeah. Christian values, yes. Traditional family values, yes. The constitutional, gun laws and freedom of speech. I was like, yes, like all the way down the line. And he's like, do you know what that was? And I was like, no. And he's like, that's conservatism. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, and it kind of made me think. And, I went along and, I still was a Obama supporter after that, but I still remember that conversation. And as time went by and, after the Obama presidency, I never looked at conservatism as a negative way. So going over that side and looking at it, I never looked at it like, oh, I can never look at that side or consider it.
Okay, can you think of? Everybody talks about a red pill moment. Did you have a red pill moment, or was it just kind of gradual?
It was definitely gradual because, like I said, I wasn't like born conservative. I had to go through the whole process. We had, there was an interesting red pill moment. It was a good friend of mine, Doug Kelly, DJK and Sons in Maryland. Anybody out there? Yeah, HVAC work. Hey, to cheap plug. But he's a good friend of mine. I knew since, ninth grade, great friend. And with him, it was a situation where he was conservative before I was. And we voted for Obama, both of us, the first term, the first election. And the second election, he didn't vote for Obama. I did. And we had a situation where he was talking to me more, hey, man, you should listen to more Rush Limbaugh. And he was trying to give me different radio hosts that he was listening to when he was at work. And I was like, man, I can't listen to Rush, man. Come on, give me a break. But I was listening to a guy in Georgia, Neil Boritz, a little bit. Quick shout out to Neil Boritz, man. I was kind of listening to him on the low, like, an interesting guy. And Larry Elder is a great, radio host. I can't forget Larry Elder. And I was also listening to quotes with Thomas Sowell, or Thomas, with him. Just I love history. So a lot of these guys saying very interesting things. But when that situation, when me and Doug, we got in a big argument in his kitchen, and his family was there, and a lot of his family there. So we just best friends get in an argument, so it got pretty passionate. And when you argue with a best friend, you know how it goes. And we were just like, he was just trying to tell me about trying to look me the conservative side. I was trying to say, no, I'm I'm a Democrat. And we got to the point where we said, you know what? Because we saw everybody kind of looking at us and we were like, man, I said to him, like, let the history decide who's right, and we'll go from there. Agree to disagree, kind of thing. And as time went by, I saw like he was correct when it came to Obama and the end of his presidency, because Obama is just doing crazy policies at the end of his presidency. So I reached out to him and I said, hey man, you remember that time we argued in the kitchen? He was like, no, forget that, man. That's old news. I'm past that. I was like, no, I'm calling you because I just wanted to say that you're right. You know what I mean? And I'm just consider being more conservative with my political views. So that's kind of was like a red pill moment for me.
So we just had a big Blexit activity. I don't know, not movement, not convention. I don't even know what the word is for, but right now there's this big push. We got Candace Owens out there and a lot of other young black conservatives pushing African Americans and Latinos exiting the Democrat Party. And do you feel like that movement is actually gaining any kind of traction?
It is. I'm not gonna. Because I'm never come from a negative perspective. I see it and I see what it's doing. I see the values in it. And let me tell you where it's connecting. Let me be honest with you. Let me tell you where it's connecting the most. It's Gen Z. And that is, 18 or 20, whatever, younger. Though that crowd, they are all about it, man. And that's the internet era. They're the guys, the young people that were born on the internet. They grew up on the internet. That's all they know. And when I went to the YBLS, the Young Black Leadership Summit, when I went out there to D.C., and young people were coming up to me that age, and they were watching my YouTube channel like I was like their news. They're like, oh, my gosh, I can't believe I'm meeting you. You're so great. I love your videos, da-da-da. And I was just like, wow, like I'm in Brooklyn just, walking through, walking, talking. And they're like, this is very important to them. So I saw with Turning Point USA and with Blexit, they are getting to that crowd more than anybody, and they need to be reached to because they know technology like nobody else, man. I met some young people there that really know this stuff, and they have a large following on Instagram and Twitter and, not as, Facebook sometimes, but not necessarily Facebook. They're on the other, social media sites. So I definitely see what they're doing there. But, there's also, I do see other areas where they, that they're not, that other people can come out and kind of touch on where they can, where I don't feel like they fully reached, next to that area.
So I understand. I've looked at a lot of the numbers for Gen Z. I mean, they're wildly more conservative than my generation ever was at their age. It's actually pretty crazy. Having grown up in times of economic decline, virtually all of them for 12 years straight, they're wildly more fiscally conservative. They attend church something 10 to 20% higher than millennials did at their age. They're wildly liberal in terms of nearly 100% acceptance of gay marriage, but fine. I mean, that's just the way society is, whatevs. And I think there's definitely a lot of hope in the younger generation in that sense. However, I mean, I don't know. I love numbers. I'm a numbers geek because ultimately at the end of the day, votes are just numbers, and reality is defined by the numbers of votes that come in. You don't win because you feel like your movement has more traction. You win because your movement on election day showed up more and voted more. And I'm just not seeing the number of African American voters decline very rapidly in all of these elections. And I'm wondering, is really this Gen Z gonna change things? Or is it something where the Republican Party needs to go out and actually go door to door? Because let's face it, I mean, LBJ, President Johnson, is the one that flipped the African-American vote to being predominantly Democrat. And he did it because he sent out tons of people during the war on poverty to literally go and enlist people in these poverty programs, you know what I'm saying, and register them to vote simultaneously for the Democrat Party and to vote the ticket of the Democrats in the local elections and so on and so forth. It was that one-on-one human interaction. I was a big critic of Mitt Romney because when he was running against Barack Obama, Barack showed up on the most popular African-American radio show like 4 times in the last 40 days before the election to solidify his base. And apparently Mitt Romney was invited multiple times and didn't even show up. And I thought, Mitt, I mean, if there ever were a time where we needed conservative fiscal values, especially in American politics, it was when Mitt Romney was running. And B, had he shaved off 3%, 4% of the African-American listenership of that radio show, of the African-American votership in the United States of America, he would have won, and Barack Obama would have been a one-term president. So I'm just curious, do you really think the hope of diversifying the African-American vote rests in Gen Z, or is there something tangible that the Republican Party can do to actually get the black community to start voting for them? Because I see a lot of old white guys, for lack of a better term, just not showing up because they think they can't win the vote, which infuriates me and only shows that they're living up to the stereotype that MSNBC makes about them. You know what I'm saying? Do you think there's something tangible that can be done?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's called grassroots campaigning, you know?
But let me ask you, it's not just grassroots campaigning. How do you reconcile a conservative movement that claims it's on family values, who works actively to repeal medical that's being provided and was added to 20 million Americans and to so many others in this pre-existing conditions, and actually really made a big difference in medical programs, and also turned around and tried to make a dent on helping reduce the 10 million bankruptcies that we've had since the year 2000, but also, more importantly, really worked hard to provide financial protection to many communities? How can you say, and then we have this incredible tax hike that's just occurred for the middle class and lower class of America, where suddenly they've woke up and found out that they got messed over with the elimination of exemptions and everything else and all the fancy work, and the only people that really benefited were corporations in the top 1% to 5%. I know, unfortunately, I'm in that group, so I got that perspective. I can benefit.
I benefited very well off the tax.
How do you defend that?
I defend it by saying I made quite a bit of money under the Trump presidency, and I'm not some super millionaire. I'm not top 1%. I'm none of that stuff. I'm just a everyday American in New York. I'm making very upper middle class area money, and when the tax cuts came, I made $85 a week, and I get paid every week, and I get a commission check as well at the end of the month. So I get one commission check for base paychecks, and I got $8 a week after taxes. Right after the tax cuts came.
But did you see what your final tax return document looked like? Because that's where they hit it.
Let me tell you,
they reduced the withholding.
Let me tell you what it looked like. I'm going to tell you what it looked like. $100 less than what it usually looks like. I'm a single male. I have no kids, single male. I was making nothing in the first place. So now I'm making $100 less, and it's like I'm supposed to be upset because I made $100 less when I made thousands of dollars over the years.
But you actually thought you were making more, which is what they did with this tax packet. But then you turn around and make less. But when I look at any of the wealthy, they made dramatically more at the end of the day. And that's the part where how do you reconcile a party
that's where they're the wealthy. Like, how? Of course, they're the wealthy. You make the wealthy. You're the wealthy because you make the most. That's how the wealth works.
And it controls the top 80% of the wealth.
And it's capitalism. That's how this country works. This is not socialist country where it's like, everybody breaks even after the money's been made. Even if you're the top earner, you got to spread it across everybody else. This is the way America works. And I'm tired of people acting like this country needs to be softballing or playing patty cake when it's like, no, we didn't get where we're at by being soft.
Well, this is the same response that people had before Teddy Roosevelt came along and broke up the trust, when we had the big 90, the 1% controlled over half the money of America. Well, they control so much of the money. Was it the top 4 individuals in America make more money than the lower half of the United States? And this is the same situation that existed back in the 1890s to 1900. Teddy Roosevelt, a Republican, came in and broke that up and made it a little more even. Under Dwight Eisenhower, Republican, they turned around and they made it so that they tax the higher at a much higher rate, and they spread the wealth a little bit through social programs and other things that supported it, and we had one of the greatest growths in this country. And here we have a situation where the money's being kept at the top. That doesn't benefit most Americans.
Well, that's why we have a president like Trump that's for the people, that's doing policies that's supporting American people. Like we have the lowest black unemployment in American history right now. That's just an epic thing. That's amazing. Well, women unemployment is the second lowest it's been in American history. Everything where you look, the stock market breaking records.
Wait a second. Do you own stock?
What's that? Yeah, I do.
I have a pretty large portfolio. My portfolio is down over this last, quote, year and a half of great Trumpism. All I have seen is it goes up, it goes down, but we've had some of the biggest drops in history, and we're sitting here with a ton of cash, but it's not being invested in America. It's being invested into the portfolios of the profit sharing of the stockholders, but not necessarily for the average American or benefiting those Americans who would love to work here in America. So I'm really concerned. And we had a rate of unemployment for blacks that was dropping dramatically under President Obama, with many programs that were benefiting then, and suddenly Trump claims credit for that. I find that kind of hard to believe.
Well, what are these programs with the solar roofs? Like, what are you talking about? Like,
well, you're talking about the amount of money that was put in this economy.
I remember that conversation you had with I believe the black gentleman, was it from Michigan, when they asked him about the manufacturing jobs, and he said, "What do you want? Wave a magic wand and the jobs are going to come back?" Like, he just disrespected this dude right in his face. And Trump comes and brings manufacturing jobs back to the country with the trade tariffs he's doing with international places across the country. And he's like, well, why couldn't Obama do that? Why couldn't he, like, if he has the president all bills?
We got to deal in facts. But anyway, I got to drop off on this.
Hey, we're going to take a really quick commercial break here, Christopher. And to our listeners, don't touch that dial. We're going to be back in 60 seconds. You're listening to Christopher Wright, who's head of the CRA in New York City. It's Problem Solver Politics. It is 7:48.
There are times when nothing else will do because you know exactly what you want. You want the Alamo, the taste of true Mexican cooking at its best. At Alamo, you're treated to a taste that is truly Mexican with an atmosphere to match. Enjoy a Cadillac margarita, try a mucho burrito, or sizzling fajitas. Voted the best Mexican food in the SCV and a favorite of former supervisor Mike Antonovich. Alamo Rotisserie in Granary Square, serving Santa Clarita for over 30 years.
Hey guys, this is Cardon Ellis, host of the new show, Problem Solver Politics, an independent political talk show that keeps you up to date and in the latest political happenings, both nationally and here in the Santa Clarita Valley. Now, this isn't your usual partisan political talk show. At Problem Solver Politics, we have both Democrats, Republicans, and Libertarians hash out their differences on air as we strive to find solutions to today's challenges. Join us Sundays at 7 p.m. for Problem Solver Politics.
I listen to it all day, every day.
Hometown, your hometown station.
This is a Problem Solver Politics production and does not necessarily represent the views of KHTS Radio or its ownership.
All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I'm your host, Cardon Ellis, and we're here with Mark Murphy, and we got on the line Christopher Wright, head of the CRA, a conservative group in Brooklyn and New York City.
He's got about a guts. It's tough to be a conservative and lead a movement in New York City and to try and be bringing up conservative candidates, and my hat's off to you. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I worked with a Boy Scout troop down in South Central LA, and on Thursdays, when there's troop meetings, you're supposed to wear your uniform to school. And it was like pulling teeth to get these kids that would go to some of these schools down in the ghetto because they were afraid of getting beat up because they were wearing a Boy Scout uniform, you know?
I thought that was out in the suburbs.
Yeah, and I was
Well, you look what they did to Boy Scouts recently. There's no more Boy Scouts. So
actually, you want to know? I mean, that's a totally different argument for another day. I have amended my opinion. At first, I was like, crap, leftism is destroying everything in the United States of America. But you want to know what? One of the most leftist organizations out there is the Girl Scouts of America. And if our program,
course.
because me and Mark both heavily volunteer with the Boy Scouts, if our program can outdo the Girl Scouts and we can compete with them and destroy the Girl Scouts of America through competition, then fine, awesome, let's just do it.
Are gonna kill
You know,
that'd be ultimate. That'd be epic.
You know, I mean, dude, they literally were endorsing Democrat candidates on their website and having Girl Scouts flyering for Democrats. So, look, if the Boy Scouts can outdo the Girl Scouts, I am all down with this competition.
Hey, but you can't bake the cookies. But hey, I do have. You brought up something earlier, and that was that you were a big follower and supporter of Ben Carson, who I thought was one of the more enlightened picks as a cabinet head when he took over HUD. Housing and urban development. Can you talk a little about how successful he's been and what's been going on there? Because you just don't hear anything.
There's things going on, but the thing is, they're not. Let me tell you what it is. They're not trying to put it out there in a mainstream media kind of element. Because if they put it out there, you know, CNN and MSNBC probably run with the ABC. There's things happening. You know, I talked to, Pastor Darrell Scott. You know, reached out and we had a brief conference call with some other people in the New York area because they got a building here in Manhattan they just built, matter of fact. So there's things happening, and, you know, I think what you're really going to see is towards the end of the first term of the Trump election, and once Trump gets reelected in 2020, it's going to be really focused on HUD and what they're going to plan to do for the inner cities, because they've been talking with people since like Jim Brown and Ray Lewis and, you know, a lot of people since the beginning of the Trump election about how they're going to help out the inner cities. And the black unemployment was one big thing that was helping out. So getting the black unemployment in a good situation was a big part of it.
But
now
still,
with the second term of Trump election.
But look how high it is. It's still over 12%, if I understand it. I mean, it's still a very high number. It's twice that of white youth, or 3 times that of white youth. And I wonder right now, are we doing enough? Here we have this major desire for infrastructure expansion. We have an opportunity to support the black community in this area, and nothing seems to be really happening on this point. And infrastructure is the one thing that both Democrats and Republicans tend to agree on.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's a part of the second term of the Trump presidency.
Why are we waiting for second term? He's got 2 more years. If he even started working more than 2 hours a day instead of spending all his time watching TV or playing golf, he might actually get something done. We pay the guy to work.
Look, the economy is doing very well right now. The guys, look what he did when it comes to North Korea, for crying out loud. This guy's
come on. North Korea has never been a threat to us. You and I knew that the real threat was over there.
Well, are you sure about that? Because they were threatening. It seems like every other weekend they were shooting freaking nukes off in the middle of the ocean. I'm like, what are these guys doing? And they said we can technically reach us. So the Democrats made it seem like it was a big deal. So if it's such a big deal, look how Trump just ended that supposed big deal when he was
done a
president
good
of the United
job
States.
in North Korea. But okay, North Korea, one of those little countries that's kind of like the noise little dog that makes and barks at your ankles and makes a lot of noise and runs
little
around
ankle biter dog.
And maybe he can hurt you when he eventually
they
hits
are
your
the little
artery.
ankle biter
But
dog.
let's talk
But
about what are we doing to really take care of middle-class and lower-class America right now while Trump has 2 more years in office, because we are paying him to work a long day. And what we're getting is a social media
guy. He's getting a long day. He's working. The guy barely sleeps. You know what I mean?
Well, so I
honestly don't think we're living in a country that has the best GDP growth is breaking records right now. Under Obama, we had the slowest GDP growth in American history. Like, give me a break. We had no growth when under the Obama presidency. The economy was looking
terrible. We went from the Great Recession to putting most of America back to work. We got unemployment down to under 5%. This country was moving, and we got us going. Our entire stock economy turned around.
It was
our housing economy
because
turned
so many people were on government assistance. That's one of the reasons why the numbers were like that. They shifted the numbers to make it look like that. There were so many people on government assistance, they weren't on the charts. So if you're on the charts,
they had to be. They were out of work. They had no jobs. They had no food, no money.
Well, there's also
nothing.
There's also the argument
that economy. There was no growth. What are you
they had no
under
jobs
the Republican administration, it collapsed. They started trying to rebuild it, and in the course of that, we had to do something dramatically to put those people back to work. And so in the meantime, we were thrilled with the idea that there was some form of government assistance to help make the transition, and obviously that was very successful. That wasn't done now. That was done before. So what do you expect from this president? What is he actually going to do for all of this values that he talks about? How is he going to help you?
How he's going to help me specifically is he's just going to continue to govern the way he's been governing. Like I never had all I had is positive change under the Trump presidency. He's defending freedom of speech. When he comes to Christian church and traditional family values, like there's nothing like before Trump, like everything was going insane when it came to terms of even radical Islam. Like Trump wouldn't say the words, Obama wouldn't say the words radical Islam after all the terrorist attacks we had in this country. And I'm like, had an Orlando shooting to take him to finally come out and say those words. And now we have a president that defends this country and is not afraid to defend. He's brash. They say he's brash, but he's truthful.
Okay,
he
so
comes in your face and speaks the truth. And he attacks the media. Hold on, I'm not done. And and he attacks the fake news media. And the fake news media needed to be
that's called
exposed
freedom of
years
expression
ago
to sit
because
there
they
and
were
criticize
determining
the news media?
presidencies. And that was a problem in this country. From day one, he attacked that, and that needed to be attacked because that was affecting this whole entire country. Okay. And so, and now that he's been exposed, look how badly he's been exposed. CNN literally lies almost every day. And it's like, are you kidding me?
Like what he says, we understand that. But what I'm really trying to understand is what is he going to do to justify the black community or even the poorer or middle-class America moving away from him? Because we know he's bought the vote of the upper millionaires, and even a lot of them give up because of the way he treats us.
Actually, yeah, let me just jump in here. That's a really good question that I have, and we only got about 90 seconds left. But in maybe one sentence or 1 minute or less, like what makes you so confident Trump has been helpful or a positive influence on the black community, and what makes you so confident that he will win re-election or at least dig into that black vote? That's what I'm really curious. What makes him a good president for the black community? How will he win their votes in 2020?
Okay, in my opinion, is the fact that he has a lot of black Christian preacher leadership across the country, a lot of people that have a strong like a kind of element of leadership in the community that support him, and they always support him, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think, honestly, Trump is just in his way fighting for freedom and fighting for freedom of speech, and there's a lot of blacks out there that want to just get their voices heard, man. And Trump's showing you, like, you know, he invited the largest black conservative movement ever in American history to the White House, 400 black conservatives. Obama was inviting Beyonce and Jay-Z. And it's like, you know, come on. So this guy's supposed to be the black president, but he doesn't even reach out to the black community. Why Trump is always trying to reach out for the black community, because he's saying, like, hey, I'm doing my best I can for you guys. Like he told you guys in 2016 in his campaign to the Alabama Black Church, what do you got to lose? Because you guys have been going with Democrats for the last 60 years, and look how bad you guys off. Look at the abortion rate. There's more black babies being killed in New York in abortion than being born.
Okay.
That is the Democratic Party.
All right, so we're going to have to exit here in a second. Really fast, in the next 10 seconds, how can people find you, Christopher, before we cut out on break?
All right, if you go on YouTube, you can find me at Conservative in New York, and that's not N with a letter N, that's I-N. It's also, you know, Conservative space in New York. And you can find me on my webpage at www.ChristopherWright, that's WRIGHTNYC.com, and Christopher Wright on Facebook, and Conservative in New York on Instagram, and Conserve, that's CONSERVINNY, at Conserve in New York, and as Twitter. So that's all.
Great job.
Tips.
Okay, awesome. You guys have been listening to Christopher Wright, Cardon Ellis, and Mark Murphy on Problem Solver Politics. See you guys next week.